1492, October 11, Christopher Columbus and the crew of the Santa Maria reported seeing unknown lights one day before the landing at Guanahani. Under the Mongol Empire's hegemony over Asia and the Pax Mongolica, Europeans had long enjoyed a safe land passage on the Silk Road to parts of East Asia, including China and maritime Southeast Asia, which were sources of valuable goods. With the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire in 1453, the Silk Road was closed to Christian traders. In 1474, the Florentine astronomer, Paolo del Pozzo Toscanelli, suggested to King Afonso V of Portugal that sailing west across the Atlantic would be a quicker way to reach the Maluku, Spice Islands, China, and Japan than the route around Africa, but Afonso rejected his proposal. For his westward voyage to find a shorter, more lucrative, route to the Orient, Columbus and his crew took 3 medium-sized ships, the largest of which was a carrack, Spanish, now, the Santa Maria, which was owned and captained by Juan de la Cosa, and under Columbus's direct command. The other 2 were smaller caravels. The name of one is lost, but it is known by the Castilian nickname Pinta, painted one. The other, the Santa Clara, was nicknamed the Niña, girl, perhaps in reference to her owner, Juan Niño of Moguer. The Pinto and the Niña were piloted by the Pinzan brothers, Martin Alonso and Vicente Yanez, respectively. On the morning of 3 August 1492, Columbus departed from Port Los de la Frontera, going down the Rio Tinto and into the Atlantic. 3 days into the journey, on 6 August 1492, the rudder of the Pinto broke. Martin Alonso Pinzan suspected the owners of the ship of sabotage, as they were afraid to go on the journey. The crew was able to secure the rudder with ropes until they could reach the Canary Islands, where they arrived on 9 August. The Pinta had its rudder replaced on the island of Gran Canaria, and by September 2 the ships rendezvoused at La Gomera, where the Niña's lateen sails were re-rigged to standard square sails. Final provisions were secured, and on 6 September the ships departed San Sebastián de la Gomera, for what turned out to be a 5-week-long westward voyage across the Atlantic. As described in the abstract of his journal made by Bartolomé de las Casas. On the outward-bound voyage Columbus recorded 2 sets of distances. One was in measurements he normally used, the other in the Portuguese maritime leagues used by his crew. Las Casas originally interpreted that he reported the shorter distances to his crew so they would not worry about sailing too far from Spain, but Oliver Dunn and James Kelly state that this was a misunderstanding. On 13 September 1492, Columbus observed that the needle of his compass no longer pointed to the North Star. It was once believed that Columbus had discovered magnetic declination, but it was later shown that the phenomenon was already known, both in Europe and in China. However, the first known written account of the Sargasso Sea dates to September 17, when the Santa Maria drifted into it, and Columbus wrote about seaweed that he feared would trap his ship and potentially hide shallow waters that could run them aground, as well as a lack of wind that he feared would trap them. After 29 days out of sight of land, on 7 October 1492, the crew spotted immense flocks of birds, some of which his sailors trapped and determined to be field birds, probably Eskimo curlews and American golden plovers. Columbus changed course to follow their flight. On 11 October, Columbus changed the fleet's course to due west, and sailed through the night, believing land was soon to be found. At around 10 in the evening, Columbus thought he saw a light like a little wax candle rising and falling. 4 hours later, land was sighted by a sailor named Rodrigo de Triana, also known as Juan Rodriguez Bermejo, aboard the Pinta. Triana immediately alerted the rest of the crew with a shout, and the ship's captain, Martin Alonso Pinzan, verified the land sighting and alerted Columbus by firing a lombard. Columbus would later assert that he had first seen land, thus earning the promised annual reward of 10,000 maravedis. Columbus called this island San Salvador, in the present-day Bahamas. The indigenous name was Guanahani. According to Samuel Eliot Morison, San Salvador Island is the only island fitting the position indicated by Columbus's journal. Columbus wrote of the natives he first encountered in his journal entry of 12th October 1492, "Many of the men I have seen have scars on their bodies, and when I made signs to them to find out how this happened, they indicated that people from other nearby islands come to San Salvador to capture them. They defend themselves the best they can. I believe that people from the mainland come here to take them as slaves. They ought to make good and skilled servants, for they repeat very quickly whatever we say to them. I think they can very easily be made Christians, for they seem to have no religion. If it pleases our Lord, I will take 6 of them to your highnesses." Columbus was referring to the Catholic monarchs of Spain who funded his campaign. "When I depart, in order that they may learn our language." Columbus called the indigenous Americans Indios, Spanish for Indians, in the mistaken belief that he had reached the East Indies. The islands of the Caribbean are termed the West Indies because of this error. Columbus initially encountered the Lu, Ki, An, Taino, and Arawak peoples. He observed the people and their cultural lifestyle and, noting their gold ear ornaments, Columbus took some of the Arawaks prisoner and insisted that they guide him to the source of the gold. Columbus noted that their primitive weapons and the military tactics made the natives susceptible to easy conquest.